Hello.
Hi, Nigel. How are you doing?
Just trying to adjust to yet another new normal. I don't know how it is. Yeah, well, it's the first week of term, of course, here in Oxford. So we just had a
Yes.
governing body meeting yesterday, which is a lot of fun. And we were all expecting to walk into something that's different, of course. And that's been, I think, why it's been slightly harder on students and staff than last term, actually. People.
I think so. I think we'd all got the idea, we'd get through last term and somehow things would be easier.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I think it's exactly what's happened. I think people have just felt a bit caught short. Look, I'm sorry about last week. I got confused.
No
I'd had a meeting with Frank on the previous Thursday, thinking, "Oh, there's only two of us here." There are only two here now, I notice. And I was looking a little bit I was thinking, oh gosh, we did have a useful discussion, Frank and I, on policy, and I've uploaded some notes on that into the Dropbox. I noticed that that rather thin WHO report came out, which I was looking over, that Dennis
yes,
to.
yeah.
And you had a discussion last week, hadn't you, a little bit about
Yes.
you might be called in. So, do you have a good do you see across the piece, Valerie? Are you seeing across the other chapters?
Well, trying to. I mean, that's really why Dennis and I have been attending all the, almost all. But it is quite hard to see how it's all fitting together.
Yeah. I think a number of us I suspect a number of chapters are after some of the same scarce resource. So
that's right.
I think we were very keen, Frank and I, when we were talking, to think, well, if there's any way we could get Daniela, a bit D'Angelo, and people like that who sit on SPI, who have a sense of what the data challenges were. But
it's very difficult. I'm not quite sure who it is we aim at, because I mean, Daniela in principle is very interested in the estimation discussions and so on, but almost never manages to get to them, or we try to arrange them at times when she can come, but it's just so hard because things crop up all the time. And so I don't know quite who the right people, as you say, we're all these things need the same, the input.
Some of the same players, aren't they? And actually, Frank had spoken to Daniela, because they live on the same road apparently. So,
I didn't know that. Right. Okay.
She said she was very interested in getting involved.
Yes,
of course, but it's one thing, and then it's quite another thing to actually have the resource available when you're being pulled in so many different directions. But I mean, notwithstanding, my feeling now is also, with the availability of people at the moment, is to put basically a framework together, which we may have to backfill some of the detail in, but I think we could understand some of the major insights we're after. And some of it is entirely unsurprising, and some of it is a matter of technical expertise we'll need to draw in. Is that Ben? Hi, good to see you, Ben.
Hi, good morning, Nigel. How are
you? We're a small, but I hope perfectly formed little group at the moment. I think it's just getting stuck into this new weird term.
But I think it's also, there are a lot of people whose involvement is they're just overstretched. On the other hand, I think if we can put together the bones of papers that we can send to people, and they can just sort of go through it in their own time and make comments. I think that's a lot easier, less demanding of people than hoping that they're going to turn up at particular times.
So that's probably the working methodology then. Is it a better working methodology, you think?
Well, I think it's a mixture. I think if those of us who can put together, as much as we can, but then send it to a few people who we'd really have liked to involve. I think, a number of people, even people like Graham Medley, has said to me, he'd love to be involved, but of course time is it's not.
Well, great, exactly.
But he has said that he would, he would look at stuff, and try to comment. And I think other people will be in similar positions. So I think we shouldn't completely despair if we can't get them to our meeting.
Well, then I might feel a little bit more Untethered, and I talked to Ben here about this, about just going ahead and putting more structure in there and not trying to just imagine there will be the arrival of a content generation cavalry where we know they're very pushed. I mean, yeah, Julia and Daniela and Graham and Angela McLean, they've all said they would, I'm sure they would look at stuff if we could generate
I'm sure they would.
Yeah. I was talking also to Frank about the overall structure that we'd proposed the end of in December, and he thought that was a good structure. So we talked in specifically around the policy piece, which is his expertise. And I've just uploaded a note on our discussion there, which is in some sense, can you see it's under data policy perspective? It just is.
Yes, dated 21st. Yes. Sorry, I hadn't noticed that had appeared.
Yeah.
Oh, it's only appeared today. Yes.
Yeah, no, I just was, and the that again, I mean, I think the data chapter will have appeal to some institutional and organizational challenges. I think Dennis's note also across ongoing surveillance requirements suggests that these are some institutional changes we're going to need to see. And it's everything about how you align incentives. Do we need agencies? Have we got the kind of right data expertise within the civil service at all? And so, you know, these aren't entirely surprising, but they do kind of need to be restated. The speed of pulling data assets together, unless they really are just very obviously available in core areas of the NHS, has been really difficult. Even then, it's been difficult. So, what I wondered was whether, if we were to look at the original structure, the more detailed structure that we put together for the end of last month, then it turned out that the data policies one was actually the bottommost. Yes, it was the bottom. It was number 9. I don't know where I got it in my structure. I'm just trying to find
which.
I'm looking at the document, which is data challenges chapter structure, and if we go down to data policies, almost that back end of the chapter is proposed to be where some of these policy skills and ecosystem challenges will arise. I think what I'd love to be able to progress is if you like, the more platform centric, some of the more technical challenges around platforms and data and models and data engineering. Now, I can certainly have a go at the first section. Ben, I think you were kind of putting your hands up for some of this. Do you want to just give me a sense of where you feel you'd like to, because I think we're being given permission really to start fleshing this out
absolutely
now. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I'm just.
Hi, Glenn.
I'm just trying to
Apologies for being late.
Sorry. No. Mm-hmm.
I mean, my link is very much in with the models and the estimation. So if there's opportunities to kind of talk about the data side of that particular aspect, then that would be something.
I mean, I think that is if you look at the chapter structure, that is very data and model life cycles. I mean, that's.
Oh yeah, sorry, I've just found that now.
There it is. Yeah. I mean, it'd be great if we could have a little bit more on how the nature of the models constrains actually the life cycles and the dependencies we need to get our head around. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. And really to develop that as you wish. But I think if we could start to fill out, I think the view was that the chapter structure was okay, and people liked that the last time we spoke. But if we could data and perhaps not life cycles, I put in partly from the I kind of think in those terms, but I mean the models themselves. And then, of course, there's a platform-centric perspective as well, which I think could be interesting, perhaps to reflect on. I'm not sure in the current context we've had to put up with what we had, but in the future going forward, what we'd like to have. And that was the kind of perspective. Hi, Dennis. Hello.
Hi, Dennis.
Great. So I'm just doing a reprising a little bit on the discussion that Frank and I had back on the 7th of January. I put a little note in the directory on that discussion, which was very much around data policies. The challenge of getting very scarce resources like Daniela, Julia, Graham, people who have actually been right at the center of SPI-M, how we're going to get those insights in. And the view somewhat emerging is that we get on and build this structure out anyway, as we believe it to be, and have them comment, because their time is incredibly precious at the moment, I suspect. And I was looking at the WHO report, the 30-odd page report that had come out just on the 15th, and yeah, I mean, it generically reinforces some of the points we make. And I was talking to Ben then about where he might contribute. Glenn, and naturally, where do you're kind of, you'll be able to comment, I would imagine, the platform-centric piece. How would you be seeing that?
Well, to be honest, I kind of see myself largely where Ben sits.
Okay, both. Okay.
Well,
let's have that as a core element to expand out then, I think.
And then possibly I could write something about the final data ecosystem.
Right.
I'm not sure I can cover all that, but I've got some idea.
No, but if we start to kind of take away a little bit of a commitment to try and inflate those two areas, I will get to work on the knowledge engineering perspective, if you like, insofar as I understand what's available, what's been done in terms of the, this is also but both reflecting on the current learning, but also imagining what we might need in the future. Of course, that's a key thing. Yeah. Dennis, you've been giving some very helpful advice around the meta principles of how these things are developed. We're quite a small group. I don't know how that compares. We know who we can pull down on, but we're still quite a small convening group. Is that how things are going at the moment?
Not quite sure what the question is there.
I'm just saying we're few in number, so we perhaps have to get on and do it. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, hopefully, if we get a clear outline of what we want and identify gaps, we can try and headhunt people to contribute.
So, I was just looking at the people who've actually sort of signed up to the Slack channel, and there are one or two more there.
Yeah.
Jasmina is there.
Yes.
Desmond Lai and Kerrion is there. But that's about it, really, plus us.
Yes, I don't know how far Slack has actually been. I mean, I think different parts of the program have used it with different levels of seriousness, frankly.
Yes, no, absolutely. It's just that if people have actually signed up there, one thinks that
true.
They might, but there aren't many on this particular channel. So
so I think it might be in this case with Ben and Glenn on the call, one thing that would be really helpful is if we could take this issue around the actual modeling data experience, what it's actually what reality has been and what might be desirable and what kind of ecosystem we might want to move to. That would be really great. I mean, I think just taking the section on data model perspective, that would be great, and expanding out the issues that you confront there. I mean, Glenn and Ben, I mean, how far do you feel that we've got a strong handle on where data has and hasn't worked and how it's been exploited in the to date? Because I don't know what the early history of trying to pull down high quality, reliable data, timely data, all those kind of lovely attributes
I mean, I think we discussed this last time, but I'm sort of coming at it from slightly outside the sort of core group of SPI-M. So we never got access to the data, although there was talk about getting access to the data, and we've kind of gone down the route of getting data from Scotland.
You did, Scotland. Well, I think what you do is write up your experience. I mean, that's the thing to do, the lived experience. And we were saying that in terms of people like Daniela and people who are on SPI-M, you know, how we get those insights, we can get that commentary when we've begun to put something together, I'd have thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
Glenn, is that something that we could try and make some progress on for the next time we meet?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I can definitely work on that this week.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm talking with Ben Goldacre tomorrow, so I want to talk to him about a data platform perspective. So I'll try and get a commitment from him to work something up. Frank's given me some good indications in the note about who we might want to talk to at ONS and elsewhere within the policy world about how things were difficult and how things might change going forward. Dennis, did you have a look at the work that I guess you've looked at the WHO document? Anything that you felt was particularly relevant that we should pay attention to?
The second report by the independent panel. Yeah, sorry. As a sort of aside, I'd already actually put that into another of the channel folders.
Oh, sorry.
No. I think what I'll do sometime, Dave, is I'll put it in the top level there because I think it's relevant to lots of us.
Yes.
But no, it looks very very incisive. I hadn't particularly been thinking about it in the data context, I'm afraid. I've been looking at some of the stuff it says about sort of surveillance and emergence, because I'm particularly keen to get our groups going on those. Was not quite sure what they're up to, and
well, given the way things are moving, that seems to be becoming an issue of the day, very much, isn't it? Yeah, people are waking up to that massively. Yeah, yeah.
But
so I mean, yeah, that's great. And also, you had helpfully sent round an outline around how you saw the chapter, the actual issue evolving, and how that would be constituted. Dennis, that was very helpful. Can you just remind us on timelines?
Well, we're going to be speaking to the editor of Epidemics next week. So, but what we were wanting to do was to try and set a deadline at the end of March. We're hoping that one or two of the contributions might be ready a bit sooner, and we recognise that maybe one or two will be a bit behind on that. Again, I mean, I suppose we speak to our understanding is that if things are not quite in phase, that doesn't matter too much, because the thing is going to be primarily online. So, if there's a laggard paper, it doesn't need to hold the others up. So the headline figure is the end of March, I guess, is as trying to get a paper written. But if it slips a bit, it wouldn't be a total disaster. And then the hope to get the reviewing done before the end of June, so the thing actually appears about mid-year.
Okay, and in looking at the other, because I think both you and Valerie are looking across all of the areas. What's the balance between reflection on, if you like, pre-pandemic, actual pandemic experience, and then what we need in the future? Are they more or less balanced, or is there a propensity to kind of imagine what we would want for a better response being a bigger part of some of the sections?
I think, well, I suppose the place to reflect on the past, if one does that in a sort of, it's probably the introduction. I mean, I think what we're trying to achieve is fairly well-focused challenges for the future. Now, for every one of those, it's probably going to be the case that our view on what the challenge is for the future is going to be very much coloured by the past and experience of the present pandemic. So it's bound to refer back in that sort of way. But I think that as far as possible, we would want people in their presenting challenges to try and, to appreciate the next pandemic could be completely different in some way, and that so try and make the challenges generic, and particularly, try and so far as is possible to think about the sort of unknown unknowns.
Yes.
What might we, what slight rather different threats might we be better prepared for?
Okay, excellent, thank you. And can I then perhaps just in the terms of just keeping ourselves on track, are people meeting each week?
Most groups are meeting each week.
Okay,
Could I just, sorry, I was on mute, so I started to talk and then realised you weren't hearing. Could I just add to what Dennis was saying, that I suppose we are thinking primarily of challenges for that as modelers we can identify and contribute to. So they're very much coming. I mean, there are lots of challenges, I think, that I suspect that just as sort of members of the lay public we're all aware of, but ideally we want to focus on things where we feel we have expertise to. So obviously data is hugely one of those areas. Yeah,
good. And in terms of the models, if you would indulge, given that the and congratulations to the Isaac Newton Institute with its announcement of a substantial new funding settlement. That's pretty good. Excellent news. Yeah. Was it? Hopefully, that will help.
I think that's been known for quite a while. I hadn't seen the notice, but that presumably means they finally got the formal offer from EPSRC before. I mean, they've been, even before Christmas, they were having to try and spend this money, but without having the formal offer. So,
all right, okay,
well,
you imagine that by the time it gets to be a press release, they're definitely confident that it really is what they expect it to be.
Absolutely, and also similarly for ICMS in Edinburgh.
Right.
We'll be having similar large chunk of money to spend.
Yeah. So, and the challenge with, I guess, with the with this, it's a rolling challenge, of course, as new modelling is required and demanded. How is the kind of ongoing evolution of what's required from the modelling and the data front being managed within the community? I mean, I'm genuinely interested question. I don't know how everybody's tired and having to respond to new challenges, and as we find more and more out. I mean, so how much of the active work in model revision and lessons drawn from that is ongoing now? Because the program seems as every bit as required as it was last year.
Well, from my perspective, I'm not aware of any kind of central aim and practice in trying to improve this. I'm involved in quite a few different projects in different areas, and some in kind of lower middle income countries abroad, and some in the UK, and each project has its own challenges, and we're trying to deal with that on a on a project basis rather than trying to look at something on a more grand scale. But whether there's other people looking at this, I don't know, but I haven't come across any sort of major attempt to do this.
Okay, so if we just spend perhaps a little while just talking, Ben and Glenn, about what you would want to add in over the next little period of time, so that I could kind of communicate that, get a sense of where you would be looking to develop your ideas and the contributions within the section of this chapter we're talking about on models, data and models.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, what we imagined here was something that we've discussed in the sort of model challenges section or the estimation section. So there's a kind of overlap, but I guess the emphasis here would be slightly different. But it's somehow about the idea that going forwards we might want to. So well, there's two elements. One is, you know, what kind of data is required for current models, and then going forward, there's the idea that we might actually use models to try and, you know, inform some kind of adaptive data collection in future pandemics that you know, we might be able to actually identify where new data would actually be the most informative, and therefore and I mean, I think that's a genuine challenge. I don't think it's something I think we've got the bare bones of what, you know, some of the techniques that we might need to do that, but it's not, certainly not routine, and it's not something that would be very easy at the moment to integrate into it's not something that would be easy to integrate with sort of the data collection people. You know, it's not sufficiently developed to do that yet, but I think that's an aspiration and a challenge.
I mean, I guess to some extent it'll be inevitable in the style of the collected papers that some reprise of the major insights from estimation and modeling would need to be in the data chapter, just so that we've got the same terminology, the same kind of challenge set. So that'd be very helpful if you could help bring that to our attention. Insofar as, you know, we do understand what data is required and where the models might actually inform future data collection. Ben, do you want to give us a sense of, probably equivalently, because again, in the Scottish context, there's an interesting, this regional within UK variations, quite interesting anyway. But what would you be looking to put into the contribution?
Yeah, so I would very much second what Glenn has said already. That's very much the discussions we've all been having in the other two papers. I think one of the added difficulties is that we sort of have this idea that more data is always better. And in, you know, you kind of think that probably generally that is the case, but in terms of understanding, are we better focusing our, you know, our resources on increasing the number of people we're monitoring, or is it better, you know, looking at increasing spatial resolution or temporal resolution, or, you know, trying to get new data in different directions? So really that's kind of just reiterating what Glenn said, but maybe, you know, those are the kind of points that I found particularly interesting with some of the modeling that we've been doing.
Would it be possible to put together just a couple of pages on those issues between the two of you?
Certainly, yeah.
In the next. I mean, that would be great. That would also begin to ground this in terms of resolution, granularity. Just interested to know, do we have a strong sense of? I mean, you'd like it, as you say, more data trumps less data or not? Is there good evidence of what you would wish to have in terms of temporal resolution, geospatial resolution? I don't know. I mean, what's the evidence?
So I would say that's probably going to be quite model specific and question specific. Right. I think, you know, if you're looking at just on a Scottish level, I mean, so we've done some work in Bangladesh at the moment, and that's really just the, you know, fairly low resolution in terms of space and time. So in that sense, we've found that both of those are quite important, but really depends on what question we're looking at. Are we doing prediction? Are we doing, you know, looking at clusters of cases or clusters of, you know, deaths or mortality where mortality is particularly high? Are we trying to explain cases of mortality in as functions of other measurements or covariates? So I think it's difficult to give an idea globally on what the main focus is, which is, I think, why we've had these discussions on, can we develop more general methodology to try and give people the opportunity for their particular data and their particular question, what are the important data and what directions or dimensions are particularly important.
And just a question on that comes out directly from that. I mean, in lots of areas, one of the interesting questions is how predictable or how far can you anticipate the questions that you want to pose? I mean, is there a reasonable place where that's that articulation of the question set has been formalized that we can draw on.
Isn't the sort of range of questions that from the sort of abstract to the well, the very applied, which and the kind of data you need is different for both, because
Indeed.
you know, if you're talking about a national lockdown, you'd probably be wanting to have parameters which gave you a good idea of the contribution made by shops in general, or places of work, or schools, or you know, maybe even at a more abstract level than that. Maybe you might just have sort of some different kinds of nodes in your graph, you know.
Yes.
And something you'll be wanting to get those parameters. So so you'd obviously be hoping to get something that's all typical of a country, and you'll be interested in whether those parameters will be radically different in a different country. But that would still be at quite an abstract level, where you'd be trying to use fairly simple models to affect sort of national decisions. You know, is it worth closing airports? Is it worth closing schools? Is social distancing making a difference, sort of thing? But then otherwise, you might be wanting very specific data for local areas. You know, a particular local determining, I mean, you know, whether a particular council area should be moved from tier 3 to tier 4.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I guess my question is, do we have an existing taxonomy of exactly those, or a matrix, or whatever your favorite structure is, of those types of questions, and how they vary across a number of important dimensions like geographic resolution or temporal resolution or whatever? I mean, it just maybe we don't, and actually it'd be a useful thing to just assemble. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could probably have a go at trying to assemble it. I'm not aware of one that's been done. I was kind of wondering whether there's something in the review of estimating R0 and R that was done by the Royal Society, but I can't.
Actually, I can't remember having seen anything quite like that. And it's not to kind of oversimplify the challenge, but if one could come up with some kind of characterization, as we all know, the data's required for the models and in response to those questions, that would be quite a strong determinant as Dennis is saying, as to what you really need and what can you get access to. I mean, hyperlocal data can turn out to be really desirable and maybe very, very hard to find, or if you can find it, it's not in a form that is classically, when we've done this work in some of the policy work in open data, local regional authorities have the data, but they don't have it even in a machine readable form. You know, they'll have all sorts of arcane ways of collecting it.
The thing is, I mean, so I mean, the challenge there is it's very much a sort of seeing the wood for the trees thing, where what kind of data will be most helpful for people trying to answer these sort of abstract questions. You know, do we need to include certain kinds of contacts in our model?
Yeah.
Where the danger is you go into the you get people who just want to accumulate everything. And some of that will be, I suppose, that will just be facilitating the kind of thing you might have as a sort of research study on those kind of things, where you wanted to choose a sample area and get data or something. But whereas the other thing is sort of whole data, where I suppose you're more saying against the background of a sort of national model, where does a particular local area figure on that, and what does that imply for local control efforts?
Yes. Yes.
So
I think it's an interesting point. Just looking at the structure of the chapter we're talking about. I mean, this very obvious point about some articulation of the types of question and what that has in terms of the modeling and data requirements. It might be just the sort of thing that we could pull together. If we were to look in other chapters, would we is the material online at the moment that would help us understand that better, or do you suspect that's one of the things we're going to have to just sit down and puzzle out for ourselves?
I think maybe some of it's beginning to come together in some,
Yeah.
certainly some of the other chapters that I'm involved in.
So which are the more developed at this point? Estimation and modeling, would you say?
Modeling, certainly. Estimation, we're kind of pushing ahead to the next step. We've got a fairly good outline and most of at least the bullet points filled in, but we're currently translating that into more prose paper type format.
Okay. I suppose perhaps it'd be worth then just since we've kind of made a commitment to trying to get the stuff around the model data requirements fleshed out for next time we discuss. Just coming back to the structure of the chapter, we have this kind of organization into various perspectives. Are you happy to go with that for now, or is there I think it would be at least one way of adding more content, but are there things obviously missing on reflection, or things that you would like to reprioritize?
I think it makes sense. It's got an overall structure, and that makes sense. I mean, I guess one of the things that we have got similar kind of, well, not quite the same, but similar kind of structure in the modeling chapter, where we look at different kind of aspects of modeling, or different broad areas. But then the difficulty we've had there is that the kind of what the challenges are kind of got lost. But I think this kind of fits a similar kind of structure. We just need to make sure that we would identify the challenges clearly.
Yeah.
But that should come out in the writing, I guess. Yeah. So the just looking at some stuff that's been shared there. Yeah. So in chapter 6,
yeah. The structure. I mean, I was sort of wondering about the structure where the data ecosystem, foresight, and surveillance comes last. Whereas in a sense of logically, you might say it comes first, but maybe the answer to that is have an introduction that obviously says you start off with, if you're waiting for the next pandemic, the first thing you're doing obviously is hoping to have good enough surveillance and so on to be ready for it when it comes, to spot it and to be ready for it when it comes. But I mean, I suppose an introduction could essentially say to find out what we need, to find out what surveillance would be most useful. We really need to work backwards by working through what we're going to do when we get a pandemic. If we understand what we're going to have to do once we get a pandemic, that will enable us to say rather better what we need to know in advance. So I think there is a logic to presenting it backwards. I just think it'll need.
Yeah, I think your suggestion is a good one, though. That in the introduction we can make a virtue out of that structure and say this is what we're going to be doing in the rest of this chapter. Yeah, we'll be wanting to draw. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, just looking at the and the modeling introduction has a sense in which it's setting out its stall. Yeah. Okay. Would you, Ben and Glenn, like to will you be able to work together on putting together this couple of pages, or just inflating the existing structure that's there? I probably either way works, but you might initially want to just kind of do a standalone on those key issues. Yeah.
I think that'll work with some of the other things we're supposed to be doing, Ben, as well. So.
Yeah.
I haven't managed to do them this week, actually.
No. Well, I will endeavour to get onto that. The other people, as you say, we did try. If I speak to Ben tomorrow, Ben Goldacre tomorrow, I will try and get some platform-centric material in. And Valerie mentioned the other people on Slack. In fact, other people have been on this call earlier. We must remember to call in read them into where we are. So do you guys want to use Slack, or is that I haven't activated the channel for this for a while, although I'm registered on it, or are we best doing this via just constructing by email and then coming back together in a meeting next week to see where we are? I mean, I know the dynamic of a community that is just chatting away on Slack is nice. Once you've got the momentum going, it's about getting the momentum going, really.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that with the other ones, it's not really working like that. It's just working as another sort of message channel. Like it's sort of
okay.
It sort of works like email. I've not seen one where it's been really active, just because I think because people are, you know, that they've got lots of other things going on.
So we're so stretched. Yeah. Valerie, you mentioned the people who were just remind us who else, because some people haven't been on the calls.
Well, that's right. So it's hard to be sure. I mean, people have signed up at different times. I think Jasmina's probably an obvious person.
She's the person I was thinking is the most active.
Who would be very useful to have, and I think it's probably, we haven't seen her for a week or two, so she's probably just totally snowed under at the moment, because usually when she does have time, she's very active. So Jasmina, Desmond Lai, and Kerrion, what's her surname? Is it Wood? Webb, that's it. It's a double W. Yeah, I think those are the only ones.
Yeah. Okay.
Apart from us.
Well, we will.
But I think if there are obvious people, then we just need to contact them really and try and get them involved.
I'm also talking with Neil Lawrence next week on some data trust stuff. So I was going to try and recruit him into at least taking a view. Okay.
I was trying to think. I mean, are there any of the estimation people that we could? I mean, obviously we've got Glenn and Ben anyway, but any more, and Jasmina, any more from there that might be specifically related to data that you.
So Danny and Paul are sort of writing a bit about how the problems with using with estimation data and estimation at the moment. I'm just thinking that some of that text might be useful here once they've written it anyway. So that they're doing that for the estimation chapter, but it seems to me that there's potential to use some of that in here. But we haven't seen it yet, so I don't quite know.
Okay.
But I suppose generally me and Ben could maybe sort of keep an eye out for things that might be useful here.
I think I was really just thinking of there are quite a lot of groups beavering away on all the SPI-M estimation work, and are there some people in other groups who could feed into this on data that we're not tapping at the moment? I'm not sure who really.
Yeah, as you say, I think we've got a number of willing eyes when it comes to commenting and reviewing stuff when we've got it. It's one of those things where I suspect there'll be a flood of good insights, but generating it at this point, I think we're probably a smallish group, I suspect. I mean, what I hope is if at least this group plus one or two can convene next week, we can endeavor to have I'll endeavor to write an introduction at least, and then the modeling requirements piece would be interesting. And just by a degree of reflection, this question about what a taxonomy of questions typically look like across estimation and modeling, what are the questions that are being thrown at the community, and how you can arrange that into some kind of space that relates to data requirements could be quite a nice piece of reflection, I think. Yeah, I've not seen that anywhere quite in that way. Yeah. Okay, well, we've got 45 minutes, and I appreciate that. We did have an hour slated in, we can take the time and talk about one or two other issues that Dennis or Valerie, you think we should be cognizant of?
Not immediately.
Do we have, I mean, you've got this very nice structure.
Yeah.
In 7 sections. Do you have people that you've sort of identified, I mean, among the people you're talking to and so on? Are there any of those that aren't covered where we really need to bring extra people in? Or do you think that with the extra people you've been talking to, or we can cover all those?
I'm going to try and press gang a couple, but the problem is that they're busy too. I think the platform-centric view, there's a number of people who could contribute it, but corralling it all together is the challenge there. I'm just looking at the modeling, the modeling chapter, and seeing that, yes, as you say, everybody, the subsections have all got contributing initials against them, which gives you a good degree of confidence that it's got a good degree of accountability.
So
there.
in terms of like the data engineering perspective, have you got people that you think can contribute to that?
The data engineering was
is that what you mean by the introduction? Or
yeah, well, actually no, that would be more around the standards and elements. I was going to try and get people that I work with at the ODI to contribute to that, the Open Data Institute. Jenny Tennyson, myself, I thought would have a go at that. But I mean, it might be a bit generic. I mean, I don't want it. It's more of an appeal around. So one question I have, I suppose, is if we go back to when the when some of the modeling was turned into open source modeling, when the Ferguson models were re-engineered, Steve Eglin at Cambridge did some of that that work, but I don't know where the work was done on the underlying data models or data schematization, whether that was actually ever done explicitly.
Yeah, so me and Ben are part of this thing called the Scottish COVID Response Consortium, and a big part of that is trying to sort of develop these kind of data, well, open source software and you know, data traceability kind of applications.
Right.
And so I'm
loath to overload you, but I mean, exactly. If you've got experience on that, then
I was just thinking that maybe I could talk to some of the people that are more the software engineers that are involved in that. So Alice Brett, who's at UK AEA, is sort of one of the leads on that. Richard Reeve, who I think was in the.
Oh, I know. Richard was on the
so he's kind of lead. I would say he's leading that, so I could talk to them and see whether they'd be interested in contributing to this.
That would be good. That would be good. All right. So then in that case, if we, what we can do is, sorry, let me just get back to the document. If you think it would be, I mean, putting people's initials against this without having asked them is a bit presumptuous, but actually.
I've adopted the question mark to indicate that I have.
Yeah, okay.
I think it would just be helpful to sort of remind ourselves.
It's a good reminder anyway.
Of where the gaps are, and where we need to bring in people. And
okay. So if we don't have an explicit introduction, which we certainly should do. I mean, because this is more, if you like, the a bit thematized course perspectives rather than the it doesn't have an introduction. We would need an introduction. I'd certainly endeavor to have a go at that, so you can put me down for the introduction and data engineering perspective. If you could have a kind of Glenn, thought of just helping guide that. I will get Jenny Tennyson, JFT, and myself will look at that. The data models and life cycles, I'm afraid at this point, probably do sit with you and Ben, if that's okay. Yeah. Data institutions perspective. Well, if I can get Neil engaged in that, he would be quite good. He's got views on this. I don't know whether they're shared by everybody, but there is quite a lot of work being produced around the data institutions perspective. I will talk to, but I'm not, that is a big question mark, I think, around that. Data platforms, well, one perspective could come from Ben Goldacre, so BG, but also, wouldn't Richard have something to say on that? I mean, or who is the, who's done the most? Yeah.
Yeah, it depends what you mean by data platforms, but yeah, I guess so. Yeah, actually, maybe that's just my narrow focus, but yeah, no, he probably would. Yeah, so the whole.
I think of him generically as being pretty informed around that. And again, Ben should be able to write effectively on that because he's been making a lot of, Ben Goldacre will be very good on that. And the data policies, I'm going to prevail on Frank to help pull that together. He was very good on that. Yeah. The foresight and I mean, data skills, I'm not so.
So actually, so the person I mentioned, Alice Brett, she might be good for that because I forget, she's like the president, I'm not sure what term it is, but she kind of leads the sort of Research Software Engineering Society sort of president or something. So I think she might have a view on training, etc. I don't know if that's precisely what we're looking for, but it's
what
one.
Skills there are. Well, it is people who at least have the yeah.
I guess there's IT skills and then there's other skills as well, but she would certainly have.
Yeah. The ecosystem, I mean, that really is the pulling it all together. That's what it is really, and that is in some sense the most a very intriguing and interesting. I'm not sure. I think collectively on this call and elsewhere we'd want to reach out because I don't think there's any perfect view of what the total ecosystem requirement is and the evolution of effective data surveillance. Fascinating, but
I think that one's also going to be a lot of cross-referencing across all the areas, aren't there? It's all the sort of, the challenges on emergence and well, yeah, a lot of the early challenges papers would feed into this in terms of surveillance.
Okay, so I have I put myself down for the intro at this point. Data engineering principles. We have myself, Jenny, and sorry, just remind me who I'd said because I'm not editing this thing in real time. I'll Glenn or Ben? Glenn, what did you say you?
Which one are we on now? Sorry.
Data engineering. I'm just reminding.
Well, I was suggesting that I could talk to Richard and Alex.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, what I'll probably do is just send them this draft and say, are there sections? We thought that you might contribute to these sections, but
yeah. Okay, I'll have a little go on this. Subsequent to this call, I'll have a little work up on this to a version 2. Is that okay? And put some. Or is it dangerous to put initials against it at this point? Yeah.
No, I think it's a good idea. Yeah. At least, if they refuse, then we can we can change it. We have to change it.
And we're aware that we want input from people like Daniela, but it's just gonna be hard to get it at this stage. So for data and models at this point, that's Ben and Glenn. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, try for Jasmina as well.
And Jasmina, yes. Yes. Okay. Yes. The data institutions, well, I'll talk to Neil. Data platforms, well, under one interpretation, we can see that as Richard, but Ben Goldacre I mentioned as well. Data policies is down to Frank. And then the skills. Well, if you could have a word with us, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do.
Just her name again is
Brett, Alice Brett.
Brett, yes.
Alice with a Y that as well.
Yeah, and we will noodle data ecosystems collectively, I'd suggest at this point. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I don't think we know all of those elements at this stage. Okay, good. Okay, so I will make a note of today's discussion, if that's okay, and pop it in there, and also modify this chapter structure in the light of discussions. If there's any other background that's coming available that you think we should be poring over that you're aware of, I'm going to look at the which of the other chapters would you recommend that we spend a little time looking at, Dennis and Valerie? Modeling, obviously, there's a bit of an emerging structure there.
Yeah, 6 and 7 are
6 and
sort
7.
of obvious ones because they're modelling and estimation and so on.
There's the policy one as well.
The
there's
policy
some,
one, yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
chapter
a lot
10.
of the same issues. And then,
Okay.
but all of the earlier ones, really, in terms of the sort, I think people will be talking about the needs for different sorts of data, I suspect.
Yeah.
So it could appear almost anywhere. And certainly in things like emergence, I assume they'll be talking, we haven't seen that, but I would imagine talking about surveillance and so on. So again, it's all, I mean, I don't think there's a problem in one would expect the same things to keep cropping up.
Yes.
And we, you know, if we want to make the same point, we can cross-reference, but very often I imagine it'll be the same sort of issue, but coming at it from different angles, where different groups will want to sort of, you know, portray it slightly differently and emphasize different aspects and so on.
Yeah, I was just looking at
It is a fascinating example, isn't it? We're seeing it right now with vaccination, of course, because as the whole regime is changing, the requirement on what data you might like to collect, if you collect it at all, to anticipate the questions you're going to get asked about modifying or changing strategy or resource allocation. I mean, that's a very real-time example, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. On the cross references, I was looking at the IDP folder just there, just doing a little bit of tidying up. Instantly,
Yes.
I've moved that independent panel report, which I strongly recommend, to the top level, and I put WHO at the beginning of its name, which makes it easy to pick up on.
Yeah.
So that's the. But the other thing, but I was just to the cross referencing. I was just being reminded that I did the two tables, which tried to get some cross referencing. That's a bit out of date and needs revisiting. I sort of feel the stage for doing that is a little bit further down the road because I think there are one or two sections that are a bit in limbo, and I wouldn't make more sense to update when one's got some sort of draft structure for each thing. But that's definitely on the agenda. I think meanwhile it's more just a question of, you know, possibly even making a note in the draft, you know, possible cross reference to X here or something like that.
Okay, so we will meet next Thursday. I mean, it's giving us only just 7 days to try and make some progress on this, but is that reasonable, guys? Are we happy to have a go at that? Yep.
Yeah, certainly.
I think if people's diaries allow it is nice to have the
regular. Yeah, no, it is. No, it's really been very helpful.
You know, it can just be 10 minutes or half an hour if not much has happened. You know, don't want to waste.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Dennis. Yeah. Okay, good. Right. Well, I've got to get on to another call. The hour is about to strike. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You.
Take care.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.